Hey everyone, this is Austin Schur here with We Write About Music, and today I am so happy to have back on again Quinn O'Donnell. She has just released a fantastic new record. It is called Wherefore Art Thou, and I'm very excited to talk to all about it. Quinn, I'm so happy to have you back. How are you doing today? What's going on?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be back. It's definitely
Cool.
been a minute. It's been like what, like a year and a half,
It
2
has
years?
been a year and a half. I have it as December 2021, which was like
Such a long
27 years ago.
time ago.
Honestly, it might have been like another world ago at this point. It's kind
Yeah.
of wild.
Hmm.
But you seem to have been good and you're making music and you have new music coming and it's
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
And I
thank you.
want, I want to talk all about it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
just like last time, I want to kick this off with what's it about? What are we talking about this time and what's the message?
Yeah, so the record as a whole, it's titled very obnoxiously Wherefore Art Thou,
Not
which
obnoxious at all.
I think it's pretty pretentious, but I think if you're like self-aware of being pretentious, it's okay.
Yeah, well, that makes it okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. A lot of Nashville people are like that. But I titled it that because it's a Shakespearean phrase. It was used in a lot of his plays. And kind of this concept of not really knowing who you are. I think in our early 20s, we tend to struggle a lot with what kind of person we want to become and learning our likes and our dislikes as human beings and um, what our moralities are. And I just thought it would be interesting to write a record about that. A lot of my records and a lot of my music are about that topic in
sure.
general, about self discovery, figuring out who you are, because I'm figuring out who I am every day. Every day is a little bit closer to that. So the record's kind of about that, also about um, specifically kind of a traumatic incident I went through and sort of this rewrite I kind of had to go through around that time of like questioning who I was in a really, really intense way, I think for the first time in my life.
Sure.
So that's definitely a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. I mean, it's terrible because none of us want to experience any trauma. At the end
No,
of the day,
absolutely.
though, like if your way of processing it is making music, then that's one way to go about it. Turn that pain into beauty for everyone else, I suppose. You know?
No, absolutely. I would definitely say writing is very therapeutic for
Sure.
me. And I think it is with a lot of musicians. I think it's our way of processing things, processing grief, trying to figure out our emotions and navigating it in a way. And I think that was kind of my mindset when I wrote this was honestly just me processing things and trying to fuel my creativity into something positive. And then I ended up just showing it was one of those nights where you're just hanging out with a friend. In this
Yeah.
case, it was my producer, one of my best friends. And we were drinking a little bit and I was, being goofy, like, hey, let me play you this song. You
Yeah.
play me this song. And I was playing him some of the record and he was like, you need to release this. This is great. Like, I know you wrote this when you were really sad, but like, I actually really like this. I want to help you. Let's like partner up and let's do this together. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that's
I
kind of
love
how
that.
it came to be.
I
Yeah.
love that though. I think and I may have said this to you before, but like having a producer, or at least having someone else that can guide you in the right direction and kind of be that push, especially for someone that like has gone through these things. And we don't need to get into that, but like sometimes a lot of people hold it close to themselves and they don't want to talk about it. But the fact that you
Mm,
turned grief into something else is just, it's kind of inspiring for everyone else because we're all dealing with something, whatever it might be. Why not make music out
absolutely.
of it? I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so like, yeah, it's been a while since we last spoke. You had put out a
Yes.
previous record, which I really enjoyed. But I can imagine that as an artist and a person, you've probably learned so much over the last year and a half. Time seems to be
Yeah.
speeding up in terms of like actual music and creating and producing and all that fun stuff. What are some things that you've taken from this last record that you've applied to this new one?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think when I released my first record, It was, I mean, first of all, it was COVID, so
No
that's
one knew what the hell they were doing. I was happy to
yeah,
get any
that
music out.
was, I
Yeah,
mean, just a different world entirely.
totally.
As much as I'm proud of that one, I think you could kind of tell it was my first record that I didn't quite know
Sure.
maybe what my genre was. It didn't maybe flow as seamlessly as I wanted it to. So that was a huge, huge factor in writing this one, was wanting the songs to sound like they go together and sound like
Sure.
they go in that order. Um, and I know that we talked a lot about just like listening to albums all the way through
Yeah,
and kind of enjoying that process as a listener. So that was a big thing I wanted. And another thing that I think I really, really wanted to incorporate was also I felt with my first record I filtered myself a lot.
why though? In what you
Yeah,
were
I just
talking
like,
about?
conveying that I was upset about something, not necessarily stating what it was or why I was
Sure.
upset. Sort of this kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to, and I kind of did that honestly in my personal life as well when I would talk to people. Just kind of I guess, filter myself in a way where I didn't want to make people uncomfortable. And that was sort of my takeaway from that. But then I kind of realized that, when you are raw and when you are emotional like that, especially in a piece of music, people will honestly appreciate it more and it'll make them
Sure.
feel more like they have a connection to the artist and like they know the artist. I think about myself going through what I was going through at that time. A lot of stuff happened. I ended up having to go to the hospital for my depression. I ended up
Yeah.
dropping out of college. I had to move home with my parents. It was very, very chaotic and a very dark time in my life. And I wrote a lot of music that is on this album from that time in my life. And I really wanted to convey how I was feeling at that time and just be honest about what was going on. Like, this is how I feel. There's no filter. And try to convey what those artists I was listening to around that time were doing.
I get it. I mean, forever now, it's going to serve as a time capsule of your life. Like,
Yeah.
whether you listen to it or a future child or whatever it might be listens to
Mhm.
it, it's like, yeah, like this is me, this is what happened, and hopefully
Yeah.
you're getting better and moving past it. But
Absolutely.
again, like I could say it 1,000 times, like it's you, it's vulnerable, and you can tell on every song, like it's real. It's not some made up BS like so much music out there
Yeah.
nowadays, which is
Absolutely.
like
It
maybe the
is.
most annoying thing of music is like, I know this is
Yes.
fake, I know this didn't happen.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's why I love having these conversations because it's like,
Oh, yeah.
this is you. Um,
Absolutely.
I
And
do, yeah,
it's really
totally.
true.
It's true. I want to take something you said though, because yeah, we talked about listening to these albums through and trying to make something that like has that cohesive feeling, which is an impossible task because how do you make something that flows from start to finish but doesn't sound like everything else? Like it's
Yes.
really difficult.
Hmm.
And from what I've heard of this record, it's done a great job of navigating that, which is so difficult to do. So, how did you start this in terms of like the sound, tone? Was it production? Like, let's look into the process a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. It's kind of a combination of different things. I remember when I wrote each and every song on the record,
Yeah.
the last couple of songs that I wrote were in the latter half of 2020.
Okay.
And some of the earliest ones I wrote were during my first tour with my first band,
Wow.
which was midsummer of 2019. So a lot of these songs are very old.
Sure.
Um, and it's fun to kind of look back on them in a way and say like, oh, I remember where I was when I wrote
Yeah.
this. I remember who I was with. I remember the feelings I felt at that time. And it's very funny because I love to tell stories, and that's definitely something I love to do with my friends. And I remember describing all of these scenarios to my producer, who's a very close friend of mine, and just talking about, oh, this happened, and this is why I wrote this song. And I think he kind of was engulfed in it too and was like, how can we convey that musically with what we're writing?
Yeah.
What are some things, some Easter eggs we can stick in here, and really transport people to that time in your life and those feelings that you felt. And so it was really nice to have somebody as passionate about this as me
Right.
on working on this, as well as my mastering engineer too. I want to give him a shout out. Both
Sure.
Carl Loomis, Connor Gilmore, both absolutely wonderful people, who without this record would not exist, who are both equally as passionate about it as me and wanted to collaborate in that way.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the flow of the record definitely comes from them, and also my writing
Sure.
in particular.
Does
But
it
yeah,
run chronologically in terms of like life
it actually,
stories?
yes and no. It
Okay.
doesn't run by like when they were written. It
Sure.
does by the emotions.
That's more what I meant. Not like,
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. It does run by the emotions. I find it's almost like I've divided it almost into two halves. So like the first half of the record, I find to be very sarcastic.
Okay.
And almost like, I don't want to say witty because I don't necessarily think I'm like trying to be a smart ass.
I mean, I
songs.
think those two really do go hand in hand in a way. They
Yes.
border the line of each other.
I would agree somewhat with that. I think the first half of the record, I'm very witty, I'm very sarcastic, almost jabby in a way with a lot
Okay.
of the lyrics I'm writing about. There's one song kind of in the middle as like a transition song, and that's my third single, When We Die. That's kind of the transition piece. And then the second half of the record is very, very dark,
Yeah.
and definitely more emotional and raw. I'm thinking in particular the last song I wrote, which I like to call my pathetic love song, is just how I talk about it. And it's just kind of me saying like, hey, I don't care how stupid I look. I don't care how dumb this is. This is how I feel. And this is what I believe right now at this
I
point in my
understand.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, totally get it.
Mhm.
Have you found that like your writing process has become a little more streamlined this time around? Like obviously you've been making music for a while now.
Mhm.
Did the words come out easier on the page in terms of like song structure?
I would say yes and no.
Mhm.
I feel like I've definitely gotten better. But that's just kind of, with age and
Yeah,
with, repetition, and you're doing
right.
it constantly, you naturally get better. Um,
Absolutely.
I think I am proud to say that I think what I listen to is starting to come out in what I write. Because I think about my first EP I ever made, and it does not sound like me at all. It sounds like me, I think, in the heart and in the
Sure.
lyric. I don't think it necessarily sounds like me musically, because I was still learning how to communicate with a producer and communicate with musicians on like, this is what I want,
Sure.
and this is, I'm picturing this in my head. Let's collaborate and work together. And I mean, I was 15. I didn't know how to
Yeah,
talk about that yet.
that's really young to make music. Like,
Yeah,
let alone do anything professional, you know what I mean? Like
I was
15
really
years
proud of
old.
that first
Yeah,
EP. Oh my
you
gosh.
should
I
be.
remember releasing it, and I had a big release party, and I invited a bunch of my parents. My parents are also musicians, a lot of their friends.
Okay.
It was like a big, big party. And I remember I played everything all the way through, and I was like, and scene. And then they all went over to my dad, like, hey, this was good. Is she okay? Like,
Oh my God.
is everything okay at home?
Did
And my
you
parents were like,
raise her all
she's
right?
fine. Like, I think she just has
Sure.
a lot of feelings. But we
I
laugh about
love that so much.
it. It was so
I can
funny because I
imagine.
was like 15, and
Yeah,
I think I have a lot of feelings, but I like to think I'm a pretty bubbly person. It was just like,
sure. That needs a music video. Like
yeah,
that whole scene.
honestly, that could have
Really
been
funny.
a really good idea down the line. I
That's
might do that.
totally 100%
But
should.
it's funny. I feel
Oh my
like
God, that's really
I almost had a little bit of because I had a release show for this record
sure.
a couple weeks ago,
Nice.
and it was great, fantastic. Again, great turnout. I felt like all of my friends were there. I felt very supported, and it was kind of the same thing. They were all like, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" I was like, "No, no, no. I wrote these like
We're good.
29,
We're good.
2020.
Yeah.
Everything's fine."
Yeah. Well, and actually, that's a perfect point that you brought up because it's exactly what I want to talk about next.
Yeah.
Truly. So I think it's safe to say to call this record heavy is appropriate. And I say that in a good.
Yeah.
So how are these songs translating in a live setting? How are you up there performing these songs? Because you're in a way you're reliving trauma every time that you sing these songs and the memories come back. How are you dealing with that?
A lot of that I think is being so far out of it, and fully having processed a lot of my grief and a lot of my emotions. I'm able to do that in a healthy way and kind
Yeah.
of close my eyes for a second and transport myself back. Because I see myself from that time period and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I just give her a hug, like
Yeah.
tell her it's gonna be okay. And she's gonna figure things out, might not be in the way that everybody else does it, but she
Sure.
does it a different way. And I think another large part of that is I'm supported by a lot of really great musicians on stage. I think my band are wonderful people. We've all been playing together now. It's almost been 5 years. I've been with the same
That's
band,
huge.
which is really saying something in
Yeah.
Nashville. And they know and they understand. And they're very, very supportive. I remember it was a couple months ago, I was playing a show and I just had like a really bad day and I was really down. I played a song, kind of put myself in that space, got really emotional, and I cried on stage. And I feel like my audience, they were like, wow, she really is able to fake tears. That's amazing. We're just very touched by it. And meanwhile, my band was on stage with me and they knew like,
Yeah.
oh, she's okay. And my bassist turned to me and like pulled me aside and was like, hey dude, like people are gonna come and go in your life, but like we're here, like we're forever. Like this is the music, us, like we're your family, we're not going anywhere. And I remember it was like, okay, let's play the last song.
Also, save the
But
tears for after the show.
exactly.
That's
um
awesome. Yeah, playing with a
yeah,
band for 5 years and having that connection. It's like don't ever leave. Like this
oh
is
my
the
gosh.
band. This is
And
the
it is definitely not a like first band you play with is your band. Like this was
no,
a process of picking and choosing and trying different things.
totally.
But when you find that group
Yeah,
that like they're all there for the right reasons, you're all supporting each other in that way. It's like that's the group you want to stick with and the ones you're gonna
absolutely.
stay with. So very fortunate in that way. And I think
Extremely.
I trust them a lot and I think they feel the
Have
same.
to. You have to trust them. Totally.
Mhm.
Um, I have a couple more for you. I want to know, like, what have you been listening to? I guess the last year and a half, and like, what artists influenced this record in a way, if any?
Yeah. Oh boy, so many different ones. I know last time we talked about the band Real Estate was a band that really influenced that first half of the record. Um Thinking in particular, I have a long list in my head. I'm trying to keep it short.
That's all right.
I know another big influence for me, ironically, is Fountains of Wayne of all
Yeah.
bands,
Well, he's one of the
especially for the
greatest songwriters of all time. I
they're a
forgot his
fantastic group.
name.
I think
He's
everybody just, they hear that and they're like, "Oh, Stacy's mom." But
oh, so much more.
that whole record, Welcome Interstate Managers, was
Yeah.
a big influence on the record. And it's so funny. There was a big debate in my band about in one song in particular, Coffee Girl, track number 4.
Sure.
I wrote it, I presented it to my producer. I was like, I'm kind of picturing something kind of Fountains of Wayne-ish. I feel like it has a really witty lyric, very sarcastic. I would love to find a way to incorporate that sound in this song. Let's see if we can collaborate on what we want. My producer was like, no, I think this should be a rock song. Like this should be like a really good,
Sure.
like solid, like this is how I hear it.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, okay. Like I'm open to hearing it, but this is like what I pictured. And we like made the whole rock song. And then I was just like, no, this just like isn't what I heard in my head. So then we start over from scratch. We were getting ready to play it live the first couple of times. And I said it to my band, like, all right, everyone, I'm thinking this is kind of a Fountains of Wayne thing. And my lead guitarist is like, oh, like this? And like plays this perfect little riff
Sure.
off the top of his head. I was like, oh, yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
it's funny. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses as a unit. And I think that was a perfect example of Jacob's strengths.
Clearly.
Just, he could meet me where I was at and was like, oh, I know exactly what you want. It's this. And I remember my drummer / producer just looked at me like, are you kidding me? Like I couldn't hear that the whole time. It was really funny. And it's amazing how that worked. But as soon as it was like, oh,
love
like
that. I'm gonna think about that when I listen to the record again.
You should, yeah. That's a big influence. And then that latter half of the record, I'm thinking in particular, I was listening to a lot of 90s grunge in particular. Especially with that middle portion of songs. I'm thinking in particular When We Die, Darl. I also wrote while I was listening to a lot of Jane's Addiction, Alice in Chains. A lot of that comes out in those particular tracks. That sort of latter half, I got a little more, it's a little more of an intimate, like last 2 or 3 songs. A lot of that influence is like Elliott Smith, Phoebe Bridgers. And honestly, one of my favorite writers of all time is Mark Kozelek, Sun Kill Moon.
Sure.
He has a song he wrote that someone showed me a long time ago called Ben's My Friend. And it's a song he wrote about Ben Gibbard. And it's very like, it sounds almost like it's pointless because it's like, I woke up this morning, August 3rd. I went down and had a breakfast with my friends. And like, it's very like, he's just talking about it. But if you like really listen to the lyric, you realize he's talking about kind of a bigger thing overall of like getting older, feeling like the best is behind you kind of emotion. And so I wanted to write a song like that. And that's how I wrote Train of Thought. Sort of, just goofy lyric like that of like, this is how I feel about this. And I did this and I ate this for breakfast. And this is who I talked to. And then you kind of get like, oh, she's like, kind of sad right now, and just you're able to kind of put that together. Almost a show don't tell style of writing, which I would say is my favorite. And then obviously if I had to name one last group, it would be Death Cab for Cutie is a big influence because I love Death Cab for Cutie.
Who doesn't love Death Cab?
Some people, some dumb people.
They're wrong. They're wrong.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, I'm such a diehard fan. I've met them a couple times. They've all been very nice.
I would hope so.
Yes. But it's one of those things where I'm like, you could be a total jerk and I would still be okay with it because you're definitely a cutie and I'm not.
Right. You've been playing for 20 plus years. You've got
like you can't.
thread.
I can't, but super kind people, 10 out of 10 human beings.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that you have the influences that you have. They all show themselves in one way or another. I have like so many side questions about those artists, but I'll save it for another time.
No worries.
Yeah, but I'm good. I will listen with a fresh ears, knowing those people have influence and impact on me. I think it will change the listening experience.
Absolutely.
Quinn, my last question for you is the same question that I closed with last time. I don't know if you remember. Basically, the question is, for the person that is going to discover you from this, what is an opening message that you'd like to say to them before they listen to your music for the first time?
And I remember I didn't have a great answer last time, and I don't think I still have a good answer now.
Good.
But also just, man, I guess, I'm one of the many, 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 many musicians in Nashville and one of the many, 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 many musicians in the world. But if one of us wins, we all win. So we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure things out. If my record, Wherefore Art Thou, is the first thing you've listened to, I want you to know I'm okay now. But if it particularly resonates with you, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and that someone else has felt this way before, and that, as cliche as it is to say, things eventually get better no matter how hard they are. Um, and that I would love to give you a hug if you're somebody who's listening to me for the first time. I'd love to give you a hug and tell you it's gonna be okay.
I think you stuck the landing.
Oh, thanks.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Well, hey,
Gosh.
I want to thank you so much again for taking the time. It was always a pleasure getting to speak with you about your music and just everything. But please let me plug your music for you one more time here. So if you missed it the first time around, the record is called Wherefore Art Thou. By the time this comes out, it will be out, and we will have the links in our article so that you can listen and share and follow along and send to your friends and your moms and your grandmas and all those people,
Send it to your grandma.
and send it to your grandma. Your grandma will love it.
She will. My
She
grandma
will.
likes
I,
it.
and that's all you need to know.
Mhm.
So
There you
yeah,
go. That's all she wrote.
that's it. Seriously though, thank you so much. This was great,
Absolutely.
and
Thank you.
I hope you have an amazing weekend.
Yes, thank you. And you as
You're
well.
very welcome. All right, I will talk to you later. Take care and stay cool out there.
I'll try my best. And
Okay,
you as well.
thank you.
Cheers. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.